What's up, everyone? Vince Ingenito here. I'm the guy that got to review Evolve for IGN, and I'm sitting here with my friends Mitch,
me,
James,
hello,
and Alex.
Hi.
And now we're gonna jump into some of the finer points of what we think makes Evolve so wonderful. But before that, let's take a look at the review. It's really rare for a big multiplayer AAA release like Evolve to feel so considered and intelligent. Everything, every skill, every mechanic, every design choice seems to interlock in a way that's both natural and purposeful. That it's so mechanically rich and still conveys the raw energy and fun of duking it out with huge monsters and action figure-esque hunters is a real design feat. Its progression system stifles it a bit early on, but regardless, Evolve is a deeply rewarding multiplayer experience that packs both brains and brawn. Alright, so let's talk about, in overall, did Evolve achieve what it set out to do? It had kind of a lofty goal of being this asymmetric 4v1 monster hunting multiplayer experience that they wanted to claim was unlike anything else before. Did it end up being kind of scaled back and kind of a lesser version of that vision, or do you think they fully achieved it?
I think they did a really good job of accomplishing what they set out to do, especially in the long dark shadow of Left 4 Dead. They had this, this is the Left 4 Dead studio. They have huge goals. They have this legacy to live up to. They're so good at doing a specific thing. Can they do it in something that's very, very different when 4v1? And I thought they nailed that part of it really, really well. We'll get to some more problems that I think Evolve has, but in terms of making the satisfying adventure of 4v1, I think they absolutely crushed it.
Yeah, I don't think this is anything. I can't think of another multiplayer experience that I've had that's quite like this, where from the start I kind of feel enveloped in this different kind of conflict. I'm not thinking about sheer aggression. I'm thinking about surviving the wilderness, and I'm thinking about how to effectively track my quarry. Like, I really had to get into that mindset of a hunter to play the game, whereas I kind of expected it initially to just be, hey, this is like any other multiplayer shooter, except the other guy's just bigger than me, and I have to work with my buddies.
Except he's a big space gorilla.
Right, exactly. He's just this big space gorilla that I have to shoot more than I would normally have had to shoot, but it turned out to be anything but that. I know that your initial impressions when you first played it were a lot simpler than they wound up being.
That's true, that's true. I mean, I guess when I initially saw the game, it was kind of pitched as this like badass 80s creature feature, the game. And I really do think that they ended up accomplishing that, and I definitely get that feeling of like, we're going in there to kick some butt. And then the tide shifts, and now the hunter becomes the hunted is the cliche phrase, but it's, it rings true and Evolve. That being said, when I did first play it, in the first few hours, the first thing I did was come to you and I said, Vince, kind of discreetly, I was like, I think this is a $20 game, It's basic, it's repetitive, but I think the reason why that is because, to its detriment, it hides a lot of its intricacies very well. The starting gameplay is like, you come down, you follow this weird dog, beast, alien thing, and you just have this very myopic view of this dog, and then you find the monster, you throw down the arena, you shoot, you reload, you shoot again, it runs away, rinse, repeat. But there's so much more to it than that. And maybe we'll jump into this later, but I think Maggie is kind of specifically Daisy the dog, is kind of the crux of that issue.
Absolutely, and we'll certainly get into that, but you're right, the sentiments you're sharing have been echoed by so many people that I've spoken to in the office and just on the internet in general, is that the game initially strikes them as very straightforward. And it's not until you delve a little deeper and learn some of the nuances and honestly play against smart people who know how to mix things up and know how to play their respective roles that you start to see a little bit more of that. Yeah. What about you, Alex? Do you think you've played something like Evolve before, or did it feel like a totally singular?
No, when I first saw it, I thought, okay, this is multiplayer boss fight. This is, the tank mode a tank fight from Left 4 Dead, broken out, expanded, a couple of different tanks. But like you said, there is so much actual hunting to it. And not just as being a hunter, but being the quarry, being the monster at first. I love the sneaking around, the silently killing, and they're constantly on your back. That pressure to get to level 2 so you can actually take them on. It's so cool.
Being the monster is totally tense. I didn't think it was going to be at first. I thought, oh, it's just this totally linear way of playing. I'm the big, powerful guy, and I just run a train through, I
automatically win.
I just automatically win. I just, just beat on these guys endlessly, and they just struggle to do anything about it unless they play perfectly. But the first time I played Monster, I was so nervous. I was actually at 2K the first time I played as the Monster, and they were like, hey, want to play the Monster against us? And I was like, no,
not in front of everyone here.
Not in front of exactly. I was terrified. Yeah. And the Monster actually has, and I note this in my review, the Monster overpowering the hunters is the monster's reward for outsmarting them.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's you have to be
Yes.
smarter than them. You have to use all these non-combat tactics like sneaking around, sniffing, knowing what's in your area, understanding the maps, knowing where a good farm is. You're going to get that good farm. You have to understand all those things and what skill points to put in what skills at different stages. Like with Wraith, who can be a total terror. I feel like early on I always put all 3 points into decoy because I just want to be safe. I just want to know that if I get caught at level 1, I'll be able to just sneak around and evade them. Decoy becomes less and less useful for actual combat later on in the match, but to start, I always wanted to do that. But just having to make those decisions with the monster, think about my skill distribution for different phases of the match, and having to constantly walk this tightrope of I need to hurry up and get to my next meal, but I also need to do it in a way that's discreet so that I don't like invite the wrath of the hunters on me when I'm not ready to deal with it. Okay, so now let's get into talking about a little bit of why Evolve at first seems a little bit more narrow than it really actually is, which I think we can all agree is the progression system that they've included. There's this, when you start Evolve, you have 4 hunters, 1 monster, and you have to kind of jump through some hoops to unlock the rest of them, and that kind of leads to the game seeming a little more simple than it actually is. So I know that right now it's hot. Right now, for the last decade, it's been the thing to have, a thing to, a carrot that's dangling constantly. You have to give players something to work towards to keep them motivated. Or at least that's what the kids tell me these days. I don't know. But what did you think of that in Evolve, Mitch? Do you think it served the purpose of what Evolve was doing, or do you think it got in the way of it?
I think it is the absolute biggest problem in that game. It is a huge anchor on it. It's in this like sailboat. It's like it's trying to get somewhere, and it is held down by this horrid progression system that doesn't make any sense to me. It gets in the way of the player enjoying the game in a way that just it baffles me. You want people to come in, you want them to explore these different mashups of hunters to maximize the efficiency in taking down a certain kind of monster, but you're giving them so few tools to do that they end up having to just grind against a character they may not even like to unlock the next one. And it's not even like there's any kind of parity across all of them. If I want to unlock the next support, I have to play support. A character I might not like if I want to play a support and that character isn't a good support for me, like I don't like buy into that person's style.
Right, you're not into Hank. You
Sure.
Cabot's your thing.
But maybe I'd love Cabot, but it's like Cabot's locked behind this character I don't want to play.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. There's no other way around it, right? You can't play a bunch of Daisy or a Maggie and Daisy to unlock some assault guy.
Right, you can't do it.
It's such a pain. It's in the way, and it just doesn't make any sense to me that not everyone is available for the word go. Because there is an interesting progression system. You can improve everybody individually by playing them.
Right.
You get these stat bonuses that totally fine. Got it. I get these little improvements that works for me. I don't need to follow a dog for 2 kilometers so I can unlock the next guy who's worse.
8,000 meters. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
and that's the rough thing about it. And I think I noticed it so starkly when we went to 2K to play a lot of the game when we were doing some IGN
Back
First
for IGN
coverage.
First?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Back for IGN First. The build we sat down and played, every single character was unlocked and every single perk was unlocked.
Sure.
And at the maximum level of that perk. So
I don't know why I didn't think this is just how the game is.
right, that's
no,
kind of what
it's-
we thought. And then when I sat down and played the alpha for the first time,
Where's Bucket?
I was like, "Where's Bucket? Exactly. Where's Bucket? Where's Cabot? Where are my boys? Where's my robot bro?" And I suddenly I was like, "Wow, the number of decisions I have to make about my team composition and the perks. The perks are actually, especially once you level them up to level 3, the statistical difference that those perks make are huge.
Yeah.
But only once you get to level 3. Some of them are impactful at level 1, but a lot of them, like the damage, like 6% damage or whatever it is, doesn't really seem like a big deal. But once it gets to
Sure,
the
it
third rank of the
stacks.
perk, yeah, it stacks, right? It stacks across all the members of your team. And once you get that number a lot higher, once it's the level 3 version of the perk, it makes a much bigger difference. But the bigger problem, I think, is how it misrepresents what Evolve is. And James, you and I have had this conversation a lot about, in particular, how Daisy affects that, because in terms of learning the trapper position, right, which is of course the position for finding the monster and keeping the monster locked down so that you can fight it. There's this line of, hey, on this side is how easily you can find the monster, and then on this side is how effective you are at controlling the monster's movement once you found them. It's like Abe is all the way over here where he's super bad at finding the monster, but he's super good at locking it down once and keeping on it once you're there. And then you've got Griffin, who's right in the middle, and Maggie is all the way on she can't really lock the monster down that effectively, but she's really good at helping you find the monster. But
She's
the
a
problem
tool,
is
right.
she's a tool, right? And this limits how people look at the game.
She's a tool, not a crutch. So
Right.
everybody, when you first start playing, you follow her. You don't want to do that. You want to use her like a compass. But before I discuss that, I want to say a disclaimer. Progression is hip with the kids. And I am one of those kids, and I like progression. That being said, the progression in this game is abysmal. And yes, because it locks out all these characters, but the bigger problem for me is that it creates two divergent paths that the player has to choose between. Would you like to play efficiently, and would you like to play your class well, or would you like to unlock the next character? So, for instance,
It's a very good point.
following Maggie is actually de-incentivizing you from playing efficiently.
Right.
So,
And the reason
Follow
for
her
that
longer, so you don't
Right.
find the monsters quickly.
exactly
Right,
right.
yeah, and that's to make clear to everyone at home, Daisy will find tracks for you. She will point you in the right general direction, but if you always just follow Daisy, you're only ever going to go where the monster just was. You're never going to where the monster is. And you kind of always have to look at the map and try to divine where the monster is going to be next.
Right.
And that's a big part of hunting. And that's a big part of what makes Evolve so dynamic, is trying to track
Right.
this thing that's constantly moving and not just trailing behind it the
Right.
whole time. But Daisy kind of...
Totally. And another reason why I don't necessarily like Daisy, and we've had this conversation before, that
Yeah.
we both think that Griffin should be the starting trapper.
Yeah.
Because there are all of these really interesting, just fun, dynamic ways to track the monster.
Mm-hmm.
You can look for corpses. You can, obviously, footprints, fallen trees. But the biggest one is sound.
Yeah.
And hearing it and kind of just getting there and almost doing that, like, I don't know, spidey sense thing where you're just like,
Yeah.
It's
Well,
here.
I can feel
right,
it.
right. Yep.
And that's such an interesting experience compared to, all right, girl, show me where the monster is.
Right, and
You know.
like, when you first start playing, of course, it's natural that you'd want to do that. But
Right.
because of the game incentivizes that so heavily, you really do feel like, oh, well, that's the way I play.
Totally.
And then you fall into that pitfall like we were talking about earlier, which is that, oh, this is a game where I follow a dog and then shoot what I find at the end.
Exactly.
And that's not interesting.
And there's nothing more to it.
It's also a problem because I understand the necessity of having Daisy and Maggie there, because you have Daisy as a means of like, okay, you as the hunters are going to be trailing the monster. This is one of the tools by which you can do that. Got it. It's helpful. It's easier than just kind of jumping in blind and not really knowing what to do. But then you also still have that shock when you lose Daisy. When you jump in and you play as
so true.
Yeah.
the
It is
second
so
guy,
true.
it's like, well, now I'm at a loss because I've been trained to follow this dog, and now I don't have that. So what do I do?
What do? Alex, did you
Yeah,
have that
I had
experience?
such tunnel vision with Daisy, and it took, losing Daisy to realize, oh, broken trees and, animal corpses and things like that, other things that I can use, environmental clues to track the monster down. You don't have to have Daisy. And bringing it back to the progression system, like I also enjoy, unlocking stuff. I don't skip that screen where all the bars fill. I love watching
I like
bars
to
get
see,
filled.
right.
Sure,
Like,
me too.
there's a lizard
It's
part of my
rewarding.
brain that loves that.
Yeah,
and at first
absolutely.
I was like, oh, this isn't so bad. Like I liked how who's the second trapper? Is it
Is Griffin, yeah.
Griffin. Like I didn't really understand how his sensors worked at first, but I knew that just by dropping them, I could unlock stuff. So I just was dropping them
Yeah.
everywhere. And then, the monster went by it, and that's how it works. The range on this thing is actually pretty big.
Yeah.
So I did learn a few things from the progression system. But then once I had everything unlocked, or like almost everything, I felt like I had the real game, and I was like, okay, yeah, now I see the depth. Okay, I can dart him with the medic, and then the dude who can see through walls can railgun him and things like that. It really it damages competitive play, at least until everybody has everything unlocked, because your Markov is not the same as my Markov because
Sure.
I've got such and such unlocked and things like that.
And my biggest concern really with it is that people will exactly the experience that James had, where he came to it at first and was just like, Vince, I don't know what you see in this game. And my fear is that a lot of people will come to it, and because of the progression system hamstringing their ability to see all the choices, that maybe that'll be a person's first and last impression of it.
And honestly,
and
they
then
have
walk away.
already. There's a lot of people
Sure.
who already have come to that and decided that this game it doesn't have the longevity to last the amount of time that they want to.
Right.
And they're kind of done with it before they got started.
See, and I am of that mind right now, and I've played probably 20 hours of Evolve at this point, and
At least.
At least, yeah. It's like we've played a lot.
Yeah.
And at this point, I am also of that mind. I feel like after 20 hours, I've exhausted everything I could possibly get out of it. Like I've seen most of the possible scenarios, and anything else I haven't seen, which is like, I haven't played a ton of games with Wraith. because I hate playing against Wraith. It's not fun. It's a broken monster. Like, I just don't enjoy playing against it. I think it's too efficient, it's too fast, it's too strong.
I have the exact opposite opinion.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it's funny
Really?
because you know
In that,
also,
yeah.
and I think your
I can't stand Wraith.
impressions are coming also from the beta Wraith.
Sure.
Wraith has been nerfed into the ground.
So what's different in the retail?
So in the retail version of Wraith, so you know how decoy used to be, there was no tell on if you were shooting the decoy. So that's different. When you shoot the decoy now, it blinks white.
Yeah.
So you can always instantly tell that you're shooting the decoy. The other thing is before, decoy cloaks you, and you could dash
Yeah, I
while
knew they
cloaked.
took out the dash.
They took that away. Now if you dash while cloaked, not only does it reveal you, but it kills the decoy.
Oh, good. That's good.
So you cannot play an endless game of attrition with decoy the way you could.
That was a massive problem.
But I agree, that was a big one, but they totally addressed that with
I really thought that
patch.
Wraith would be the only monster I ever saw online. Like when I was playing with Wraith, I was like, well, this thing is the best.
I mean,
Why would
you
not
would
be
if the
Wraith?
progression wasn't so grindy. You would see people who were like just playing it because it's available rather than like, well, I need to play 30 more games to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
I think regardless of any differing opinions that we have about the balance or how many hours we get out of the different permutations, I think we can all definitely agree though that we would have there's a lot of hours to get there that some people won't because that progression system just makes them think that there's nothing there.
Right. I don't think the absence of it would have been the best solution. Maybe it would have, but I definitely think the way that it's laid out now is not good.
No.
It's a tough, kind of curveball to hit because it's, like you said yourself, being one of them kids.
Yeah, man.
In this day and age, you just
Gotta
can't.
prestige.
You just can't. Right, you got prestige.
Yeah.
Got to get that prestige, man. Like you can't make a multiplayer game for better or for worse. You cannot make a multiplayer game anymore without one of those progression systems. But if the progression system hamstrings, what the goal of the game is, then maybe the best thing is to not have one. I don't know. It's interesting to talk about. All right, so now let's talk about the bread and butter of what makes Evolve so outstanding, at least in my esteem. It's the skills, it's the team compositions, it's the synergies between them, and how they interact with the monsters, different approaches and tactics that they want to take.
It's the nerd stuff.
It's the nerd stuff. It's the stuff that honestly has
stuff.
consumed you and I. Like James and I, especially over the last 2 days, have been just sitting around and just nerding out
You're
about
analyzing
this
the
stuff.
meta. Of
Yeah,
Evolve.
absolutely.
totally.
Analyzing the meta of Evolve. So I think one of the reasons that the game has such legs for me is that skills that seem like they're obvious in use at first end up having a totally different use. Like Alex, I think you have a story about the mobile arena, which is the trapper's standard class
Yeah.
ability. Every trapper has that. It's the big dome. For people at home, it's that big like blue electric dome that goes up that allows you to keep the monster trapped in during a hunt so that you can take him down. But you found another use for it when you were playing nest mode, which is the mode where you have to go around destroying all the monster's eggs.
Well, if you have a nice selfless trapper, the trapper can dome himself in with the monster in nest mode while the other 3 guys try and bust up as many eggs as they can. And of course, I mean, the monster just destroys the poor trapper. But meanwhile, you can get a couple eggs down, which is huge,
Yeah, even 30 seconds, right? Like if you can just stay alive for that long,
Yeah.
great.
Right.
And Abe is particularly good at that. I mean, like Abe could just throw down a bunch of
Stasis
stasis grenades and
Yeah.
just be like, "Come at me, bro! Like, what are you gonna do?"
That's very true.
You're walking in molasses. Like, there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Yeah, for me, one of the big things that I've changed my feelings on over the course of the game has been Hank's orbital strike. When I first used it. Oh, don't get me started.
Why are we awing about the orbital strike?
It's
awesome.
He's not a believer. He's not a believer, but I'll tell you why he should be a believer. Him and I've had this discussion constantly over the last 2 days.
I'll tell you why. Damage amp.
Yeah, damage. Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, we'll totally get to how damage amp works into that. But it's like, so on the surface, it's just like, hey, look, it's a haymaker punch. It's this big, slow, ungainly ability that allows you to do tons of damage by dropping missiles down on the monster's head. So it's just a Hail Mary, right? I thought at first you just kind of use it whenever it's off cooldown to try to get a shot on the monster. If it hits, great, we got lots of damage. If not, then oh well. But what it's totally come into its own as for me is as an area denial tool. Like you'll learn as you play the game more that the monster, his main objective, or her, if you're playing Wraith, the monster's main objective is to get alone time with one hunter. Just kind of pull him off into the corner and be like, hey, let's come and talk over here with my hands all over your face. And that's what monsters want to do. They want to bully you into a corner and keep you there. And then once they've incapacitated you, a lot of monsters want to stand over that incapacitated hunter and either work him down, or they want to at least guard, kind of like puppy guard the corpse so that no one can come and res it. Well, they just can't do that with Hank in the team. If Hank is on the team, they simply can't do that because they'll be punished with a strike. by standing that basically that incapacitated hunter or that hunter that's been cornered in and trapped against the wall, they are a commitment from the monster. The monster says, I am going to stay here. And then Hank gets to say, then you are going to take this much damage at least. And you can really not make that, like you were saying, with Cabot on the team as well. Oh, actually, no, you couldn't have Cabot. You couldn't have
he's
Cabot.
the same class, isn't
right,
he?
right. But you could have Val. And if they put weak spots on that monster,
For sure.
the
orbital
airstrike,
strike
the
hitting
orbital
that
strike
is
can't
gonna
hit
do
those.
Well,
It's going to do
stasis
massive
grenade,
damage.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stasis
There's
stasis
synergies
grenade. So
between
there's
a lot of-
lots of ways to lock them down.
Any kind of movement controlling move in conjunction with that orbital strike is awesome, and I love the communication that's necessary to pull that off. Getting on the mic like,
But it
I'm
never
about to drop
happens is the
this.
problem.
Oh,
It happened in my game last
when
night.
you play pickups with Scrubs.
Well, that's
I
the-
played a pickup with Scrubs last night, and it happened,
The dream
and
of
everybody
orbital
loved it.
strike is, yes, there's an area denial
it's not
tool
a dream.
because your monster's
First of all,
a pro.
I'm going to stop you for a second. It's not a dream. It's a reality. But
Okay, so the way it really works in games where you don't have friends like me, because Vince refused to add me on Steam, is the arena goes up, you have this sweet fight, and then the monster escapes out with 1 bar of health, and then Hank's like, YOLO, and tosses that, and then you try and chase and get knocked back like a mile. Same
That's
thing.
the worst.
That's how it works.
But if
And
you're an
same thing with the-
incapacitated hunter or a hunter that's trapped in the corner, that's the best.
It
Like,
is good.
You're
Right.
an incapacitated hunter lying on the ground, and all of a sudden this orbital strike just not
And
only
poison grenade
messes
too.
the monster
Poison
up.
grenade
Yeah.
is my least favorite ability.
Which you hate
because-
too, I know.
Yeah, because the instances when it's good, I will give orbital strike. It has the potential to be totally awesome. It can totally be an area denial tool. It can totally do a ton of damage. You can totally drop it on a monster who's evolving. All these things. Poison grenade, the payoff is like, yeah, you do a little bit of taking damage. The detriment is that your entire team runs through this thing and you blow a complete opportunity to engage in a fight.
But if you're using it the right way, your team shouldn't be running through it. They should be throwing it to make the monster want to come to them and come off
but
of where he is.
a lot of the times it always has an out, so it's just like, well, there's a wall of slow. I'm going to go this way.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about them making the slow effect. I'm kind of sure I'm kind of sure in beta or in alpha that the poison grenade didn't do
No,
that.
did it have
friendly
It's-
fire?
Well, it's not that it does friendly fire now.
But it
doesn't-
affects you.
But it slows any teammates that are walking through
questionable.
it. So yeah, I agree that's questionable. But enough about your not liking area control abilities.
Well, this is what's so cool about Evolve. It has this depth, and you can get into the nitty gritty of the
start
characters
theory
and the
crafting
composition.
and-
Exactly, it's definitely like a theory crafter's game, and I'm excited to see a touchy subject. The DLC, regardless of how it's priced or whatever.
Right, the new monsters and the
wanna
new- and
see
the new hunters.
what is added to
Yeah.
it, and,
Yeah.
and the
Sure.
synergies between all of the hunters. And also, we haven't really talked about the monsters. I mean, the monsters'
yeah, let's
gameplay
get into that.
tactics. Mind games.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
about that. It's
Remember
all
the
about
first time you played a monster who knew how to crouch? Like
Exactly.
Game changer.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
Huge.
actually the other night. Like there was this huge pillar, and there were It was like Winnie the Pooh or something. There were footprints around the entire pillar and nothing else. And our team literally circled it twice, and we were just like, "What's going on?"
That's like
He's
when
like, Daisy's running in circles,
we
and
didn't
I don't
have Daisy.
understand
I was
why.
playing Griffin for the first
Oh, you're
time.
playing
And I was
Griffin.
like, I am such a screw up right now because Daisy would know.
that's the moment
But-
where you throw down the dome, like, oh, he's probably here. No.
And then the monster's off in the corner snickering.
Yeah. No, that's the good stuff too, right? Like you have the 20 seconds, whatever, at the beginning as the monster. And I would always just run in circles at the landing pad, crouch, and then leap away.
Yes.
Like, have fun.
Have fun, guys. Figure it
Or I'd
out.
like run off to the south, turn around, crouch, leap to the north, and just be on my way. Nobody be any the wiser.
No, but no, being careful as the monster, like I said before, is surprisingly not only effective, but it's kind of required. If you don't do that, then I think you will just get found.
Totally.
And the earlier the engagement happens, the worse off it is for you. But on that topic, one of the things that I think has been really interesting to me about, we were talking about theory crafting, and actually I've seen this stuff in practice a lot since the game has gone live, is how some teams are kind of more geared towards forcing early engagements and winning them.
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the only viable strategy. Like, there is no late game for the
that's true.
hunters.
Well, no, I see. No, the way I slightly disagree with that. So first of all, if you let the monsters get to stage 3 and you haven't eaten into their real health, you're done.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
you
I mean,
lost.
so,
Yeah,
so in that
you've
sense, you
You've
need to
lost.
force early
Okay?
engagements.
You don't necessarily need to force a super early one, but you need to be able to. You can't just let the monster
You
do this
have
thing
to
for
fight
10
it at
minutes.
level
You have
2.
to fight it. Yeah,
You have to fight it at level 2.
You know,
at the
yeah, at
latest.
least
Right.
by level 2, you have to fight it. You have to get. Here's the thing. Most monsters, I feel like eventually, unless they're, I don't want to say unless they're bad, maybe the hunter team's really good, most monsters are gonna get to stage 3. The question is, do they get to stage, do you fight them at stage 3 with full armor and 3/4 of their health, or do you fight them with no armor and half their health? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the huge difference, because I feel like a monster stage 3 with full armor and full health. Nope, you're not. Unless those
you're
hunters.
God tier.
I was gonna say, unless those hunters are being played by the hands of God himself, that is not gonna happen.
Well, it's a soft and rage mechanic.
Yeah.
It's just basically it gets to a point where if no action has happened, you've been completely inactive. There's no winning for you. And this is kind of where there's a lot of areas. And forgive me for saying this, Mitch, but there's a lot of areas where Evolve treads into the MOBA territory.
Totally.
Oh yeah,
Hey, don't let that dude get free farmed.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
That's exactly the thing. You have to harass them off their farm. You
Big
can't
time.
just let them sit there in the jungle. Literally, in this case, in this game, you can't just let them sit there in the jungle eating.
Farming
I mean,
jungle.
that's
you
the
know.
whole thing. Like, this game is one giant gank.
Yeah,
Right.
it's one huge Roshan fight, not a Baron fight. Roshan fight.
Oh, so it's
Goliath's basically Roshan.
It's Grave Golem now. I'm playing. I'm playing your
Oh God. No, but about the team compositions and how they play into that. So what I'll tell you is this. You're right, you want to force early engagements if you can, but the flip side of that is that if you go with a team that's so all in for right now, then you could end up in a situation where you don't have what you need to fight at stage 3. Because what you need to fight at stage 3 to have any chance is you need to have some kind of ability to set up a defensive perimeter. Maggie has, the harpoon traps. More importantly, Markov has the arc mines, and Bucket has the sentry turrets. Those 3 together create a very stable pack for, like, you know what? If we chip away at the monster's real health throughout the course of this match, and we can get him to like half health, going into stage 3 where we know he's coming to the generator, we're not in great shape, but we can fight at that point.
That's
like,
the
we
big
can
thing,
still
too.
fight then. If you go with a team that's all about right now, if you're like, listen, I'm gonna go with Kyra, and I'm gonna go with Parnell because I want his like super bursty damage right now, and we're gonna go with Cabin on support because he's gonna be able to amp all that damage, and we're gonna kill this
And
monster
Abe.
very very quickly early, right? And Abe, right, who's great at controlling the fight, but terrible.
fight
at-
squad,
You know,
yeah, right.
you know.
When you need lockdown, you need AoE, you need
Right.
some kind of like crowd control
Right,
at all
sure.
times, whether that's slow
But if you-
or a harpoon.
But if you put all your eggs into this, like, I'm gonna get them fast and early,
And then you don't.
and then you
Right,
don't.
you better find the
and
monster.
You better
Yeah,
find the
with that
monster and kill
composition,
it right
right.
away, because if it gets to stage 3 and you don't have any of those area denial or those defensive skills, you're just not going to win. You're just going to auto lose once they hit stage 3. And it's the same thing as in you're using the MOBA comparison. This is the same thing. Sometimes your strategy is like, look, we need to jump on this particular hero
Yep.
fast, otherwise they're going to get out of control. And it's kind of the same dynamic, and I find
Right.
that really interesting.
Right. There's never. I mean, that being said, there's never a time you don't want to fight the monster at level 1.
Right.
That's always.
It's always
the
beneficial
goal.
if you can
Right.
do it.
Right, because the heroes never get the hunters never get stronger.
Right.
Sure.
Right. They're just flat power.
You just get
level across
outmatched
the-
eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. What I found to be one of the most effective team compositions that was just really harassing me was Kyra on med, Bucket on support, and then it was Maggie on Trapper. Maggie's giving them the basic direction they need to go to. Kyra's giving them the speed boost, and then once we're in the vicinity, Bucket
Yeah.
has got that UAV after me the whole time. I mean, I had this terrible bad luck where the first nibble of a meal I took, it just carrion birds, because the carrion birds are kind of randomish. Like when they come in, the spotter birds are set in the map, but sometimes
Right.
a carrion bird just shows up, like,
like,
hey,
oh, you're
what's up?
feeding.
Let me
Right.
share. It seems like you're enjoying this meal, and they just show up. And like that happened to be early on, and then they were just. It was either a UAV following me the whole time, or they were nipping out my heels with the adrenal boost from
Right.
Kyra, and they always knew the direction to look for me with Maggie, and I just
Right.
could not get away, and they were just dogging me the whole time.
And that's a very frantic kind of game to play as a monster, but there is a stark contrast to then getting completely having the upper hand on your opponent and playing like a psychopath and just messing with them.
Oh, yeah.
Having a ton of fun. I was playing against a Kraken who I missed an arena. Sorry.
That's the worst
yeah,
feeling.
and he stood right outside of the arena and he looked at me. And I was like,
You two had a moment.
yeah. and then he just flew away. And it was,
He's like, this could have been us.
it was great playing. And it's those kinds of like emergent, silly experiences that I think grant this game more longevity than people give it credit for, or at least I did initially, for sure. That being said, I'm interested to see if I'm playing it in a month. So we'll see.
Yeah, but you know what? If I play the game only for the next 2 months and I get the amount of enjoyment that I've been having out of it, then to me that will have been absolutely time and money well spent.
Totally. I mean, I played 20 hours and I liked it. And if I'm done now forever, right on. I got 20 hours.
You got 20
of fun.
hours of enjoyment out of it, yeah. And there's
Easy.
absolutely nothing wrong with that.
It's a very unique experience too.
Yeah.
So
That's the thing. It's an experience that whether you decide you want to play it for 20 hours or you decide you want to watch streams and invest in it for the long term, whether or not it's going to have that long term, who knows? It's hard to tell in the early days of a game. But whether or not it has it, I do feel like the experience is something that's worth having for anyone who cares about multiplayer games, because it is the kind of experience that really you haven't been able to have before. Right. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us for the discussion. Thank you so much, folks at home, for listening to us nerd out and babble about this stuff for so long. What are some of your favorite skills and favorite team compositions or your favorite monster tactics? Totally let us know in the comments below. And for more on Evolve, keep it right here on IGN.